We're in part 4 of the end times. Now, I just want to remind y'all, if you are new here, have not been here before, and you do not have part 1, 2, and 3, the reality is you don't need me if you've got those copies. But if you don't have those copies, you can go on Sagemont Church website, and under the Learn tab, we have the pray, worship, pray, serve, give, all that across the top, the 6 main words of what we try to do here at Sagemont. Under the word Learn, you can pull down, and my name is off to the right side. Brother John's is here, and then mine's off to the side. Click on that and go under the End Times tab. It'll say Trinity, and then it'll say End Times. And of course, 20 books of the Old Testament and all the notes and videos are there from those. And all of the New Testament notes and videos are there also. But go to the End Times, click on it, and way in the right-hand column, you'll see some PDF little things. You click them, and those notes, corrected notes, after we get through teaching here, I'll make a few final little corrections, such as this morning already. I've been handed where there's a couple of things I need to fix, and I'll fix those and put those up. They've been corrected. Go pull those down and print them. And you can listen to what I taught in class also there on the website. There are just a whole bunch of folks who go to that website every week and listen. I will have today's lesson up, of course, with the notes by 5 o'clock. What we're doing here in this class will be up by 5 o'clock today. And by tomorrow night, over 500 people will have downloaded it and watched it by tomorrow night. It's just the way that things happen. And then through the rest of the week, another 1,300 or 1,400 people will watch it before we meet together again next week, which will be in part 5, I hope. That's where we'll be. Let's start today with part 4 of the end times. And we are at a point in time in the story. We started with where we are right now in this timeline, where we are here in the church. That's where we started in part 1. And we've gone through the story now of what is going to transpire through the church being taken away, through the first 3.5 years of the tribulation, through the second 3.5 years of the tribulation. And last time we were together, we ended up with being at a place that we are within 5 months of the day of Armageddon. Within that last 5 months of the day of Armageddon, there is a great gathering from all over the world that begins to happen for the Battle of Armageddon. And that gathering begins. Now, just a little reminder. The 7 years of tribulation will almost be over. The years of tribulation had begun with great hope for the nation of Israel. They had signed a peace treaty with the supreme president of the revived Roman Empire. And they're going to do that. I don't know why they're going to do that, because he is a killer. On his rise to power, he has killed 3 kings of 3 different countries that he takes over. He has a battle wound in his head that is visible to all, and yet for some reason Israel is going to trust this man to make a peace treaty with them. Jews who have lived in countries all over the world will begin to fly back into and to move back into the promised land. And for almost all Jews who have ever lived, whether they're in Chicago or New York or anywhere in the world, one of the goals of their life, even though many of them it'll never transpire, their goal is to move back to the promised land and to live on the promised land without restrictions. So they'll begin to move back. There is not a place in the Bible that calls for them to move back. It is not the Lord's will for them to move back. It is simply a prophecy that they will start moving back because of this peace treaty. They have been scattered all over the world since the very first deportation that occurred with the stoning of Stephen. Stephen is stoned. Stephen has stirred a mess there in the book of Acts. He is one of the first deacons. He is feeding the Gentile Jewish women who have been excommunicated basically from the temple, so that because they are not Jewish by blood, they cannot come and eat there when they're poor and have no meals. And Stephen stirs up a great mess. Stephen is stoned, and the people begin to run and to be deported all out of Israel because of the persecution by the Jews of the Jewish Christians, Christians who become Jews. So these Christian Jews begin to just scatter all across the world. Well, that peace treaty is put in place, and Israel and the Jews are hopeful in that, but yet that comes to an end when the Supreme President breaks the treaty. He comes in at the end of the Battle of Gog, at the end of the first 3.5 years of the tribulation time, and he defeats Gog, and he doesn't go back home. He stays in Israel. And in fact, he goes into the temple in Jerusalem and he proclaims himself to be God, and he begins to persecute all the Jews as well as anyone else in the world who did not pledge their loyalty to him and take upon them the mark of the 666 on their foreheads or on their right hand. Now, with that act, the Jews living in Israel at that 3.5 year point begin just to scatter again throughout the world. And speaking to the prophet Zechariah, talking about this, the Lord says this. He says, "But I scattered them with a storm wind among all the nations, whom they have not known. Thus the land is desolate behind them, so that no one went back and forth, for they made the pleasant land desolate." In other words, they packed up everything, and they moved out. Evil is in their land. The supreme president of the revived Roman Empire is there with his evil armies. They have taken over Israel. They've taken over the promised land. And really, none of the Jews want to go back to that land because it is not pleasant any longer. The fury of the supreme president against the Jews is the storm wind that is mentioned there in Zechariah that will cause the Israelites, just in the middle of that tribulation time, to run to the four corners of the earth, even to the countries where they will meet people who they do not know. Now, with the supreme president and his army in the promised land, the Jews will not find a place of safety there or anywhere else, no matter where they run. And in fact, people of the nations will begin to capture the Jews. Some of the fleeing Jews will be captured by the Edomites. That's not in your text, but that's what we're talking about here. Will capture them and begin to trade the Jews like commodities, or to sell them as slaves in the middle of the tribulation time. The Lord prophesied this event in Joel, and here is that scripture. He says, "I will gather all the nations and bring them down to the valley of Jehoshaphat." The gathering is going to happen. "And then I will enter into judgment with them there on behalf of my people and my inheritance." He's going to judge everybody in the valley of Jehoshaphat because what they've done to Israel. But that's not happened yet. "Whom they have scattered among the nations, and they have divided up my land." That is all happening where we are in the timeline at the end of the tribulation, but the scattering begins at the middle of the tribulation. And then the last line here is the reason why the Lord is going to enter into this judgment. It's just one of the reasons when he says, "They have also cast lots for my people, traded a boy for a harlot, and sold a girl for wine that they may drink." Just one reason. Well, here's a special note. That's just kind of a review. So here's a special note about Edom. because Edom is a major thorn in the flesh of Israel. The descendants of Jacob are the Israelites. The descendants of Esau are the Edomites. Remember that. We've already talked about that. Today, the Edomite land south of Israel is basically deserted. The ruins of the area called Edom, which you see in that map, and you also see it over here on the map I've put on the board. You've got the Sea of Galilee, the West Bank of Jerusalem, the Dead Sea. You see the Edom area below in green, and the red capital city of Edom, or at least it was. It is not today, but it will be again, is the town of Teman. The ruins of Edom have become a tourist attraction for people who are going to Israel, for visitors. In fact, the Treasury building in Petra is among one of the favorites of all. You know that Treasury building if you saw Indiana Jones and the Raiders of the Lost Ark, because at the very end of the movie, they filmed that last scene where the picture of that famous treasury is down in those canyons. And some of y'all have been to these places and you have seen them. And there are more of these carved out stone buildings that are in the sides of those canyons that are there, that are really very narrow. You look straight up to the mountains to up high. The Edomites have already abandoned this area long before the book of Obadiah was written. And Obadiah is a prophecy to the Edomites. Their land is empty. In fact, their land is empty because after the northern kingdom and the southern kingdom are exiled, the Edomites begin moving up into the promised land, and they inhabit most of the promised land. In fact, the Lord delivers this prophecy to them through the prophet Obadiah that even though they're gone and they're not there, they are going to return and they're going to build Edom again. In fact, the prophecy addresses their abandonment of the land in that 24-verse book of Obadiah. However, it also indicates that they will once again inhabit their land before the great and the mighty day of God, which is called Armageddon. At that time, at the time of Armageddon, Teman, situated on the Paran mountain range, will once again be the capital of the Edomites. After abandoning their land, the Edomites, also known today as the Palestinians, inhabited Israel until 1948, when they were at that time in the war that was fought by the Israelites after Britain gave Israel the land and made it a country again in 1948. The Palestinians were relegated to the Gaza Strip, which you see there on the map, and also the West Bank of the Jordan River. I have it on this map too, the Gaza Strip with its 5 major cities and the West Bank, and that carves around the city of Jerusalem because the Palestinians do not own the city of Jerusalem, but that's what they want to own, is the city of Jerusalem. Never forget, all those Arab nations over there want to own the city of Jerusalem. Yes, sir. No, it's on the edge of Israel because the Jordan River is the edge of Israel today. When you go across the Jordan River, you go into the country called Jordan. In fact, let me draw that for you. Look here. Israel now looks like this. This area is called Jordan today, and of course Syria is right above. The West Bank is on the west side of the Jordan River. It's on the east side of Israel, but it's on the west side of the Jordan River. That's the reason why we call it the West Bank of the Jordan River. And you have the Gaza Strip. All the Palestinians who lived in Israel have now been relegated to these 2 spots. In the future, and they have not done it yet, in the future, the Palestinians, and this is part of next week's lesson, by the way. They will leave these areas and move back down to Edom, and they will begin to inhabit Edom again and rebuild their capital city of Teman on the Paran Mountains. I put Edom here sideways because this is the Paran Mountains that come up along that. Now, it's very interesting because whenever they actually come back and flow back into that area during the tribulation times, the Israelites will try to flee from Satan in the middle of the tribulation time, and they'll flee to the south and to the east and to the west. And the Edomites on the south, the east, and the west in the Gaza Strip, on the West Bank, and down in the Edomite area, those Edomites will begin to capture the Jews as they flee away from their homes, and their Edomite cousins, the descendants of Esau, will capture them and begin to turn them into Satan, the supreme beast, the supreme president, the false prophet, for a ransom, even trading them like cattle and bartering them for harlots and wine. Now, it will be essential for the Edomites to be established back on their own land when the Lord returns. They're not there now, but they have to be back in there by the time of the tribulation for the Lord to fulfill the following prophecy on the day of Armageddon. You got that? I'm fixing to tell you a prophecy that will be fulfilled on the day of Armageddon. When the Lord breaks through the eastern skies, He does not go directly to the valley of Armageddon. Before He reaches Armageddon, He makes a stop above the Edomites. Habakkuk 3:3, God comes from Teman, and the Holy One from Mount Paran, Selah. Selah means stop and think about that. His splendor covers the heavens, and the earth is full of His praise. Now, I yank that out, and I'm using it as a proof text, but the context of that passage is the Lord coming to destroy the Edomites for what they have done to their cousins before He destroys the enemies in the valley of decision, in the valley of Armageddon. It's just got to be in place. So before arriving at Armageddon, the Lord will judge the Edomites in their original land. You need to understand that by this time, evil is everywhere. Everywhere evil is predominant. Satan, the supreme president of the revived Roman Empire, and the false prophet will call for the soldiers to come and to gather for this great battle against the Lord. And that's where we pick up where our timeline. On the left-hand side of the page, you see the blue there. It tells you the timeline of where we are when we get to the second coming next week. That timeline is going to change to red, what it's called the day of the Lord, the second coming. It's actually the last day of the tribulation, but I just want you to know when you hit it, that is the coming of the Lord. At noontime, we change to the second coming of the Lord for the battle of Armageddon, and I want you to understand that. So Satan, the supreme president, and the false prophet will believe that they are in control of this gathering to fight against the Lord, but in reality, it's the Lord's plan. It is mind-boggling to me, just mind-boggling, that a man who has become president by killing folks, and a false prophet of a now defunct apostate religion, because remember, by this time in the story, the apostate religion has been done away with in a vote. The laws of that apostate religion have been done away with. That man thinks that they are powerful enough to do something with God, the Creator, the Lord, when He comes. It is amazing to me that Satan himself believes, and this is not in your notes, so this is extra, folks. Satan himself believes that he can overcome the things that God has planned. And Satan knows every bit of what God has planned. Why? Because Satan saw it written down when it was being written down. And he knows every word better than I know and better than you know. And he still somehow, in his warped, evil mind, thinks that he can do something to stop the Lord when he comes. Amazing. Do you know how minuscule we are here on earth? We are so minuscule. Okay. I think the fastest I have ever driven in a car is about 120 miles an hour. Have any of y'all been that faster in a car? In a car? Oh, my soul. I haven't. I think the fastest I've ever been in an airplane is probably 350 miles an hour or something like that. Although in my 8 o'clock class, we've got some pilots that flew the jets that fly faster than that. You know, it doesn't matter how fast you think you can fly. This earth that we are on right now spins. Do you know how fast this earth spins? About 1,040 miles an hour. Any of y'all have speedometers on your vehicles that go that fast? 1,040 miles an hour. Do you know how fast the earth that we are on spins around the sun? It is almost 94 million miles that our earth travels in 365 and a quarter days. That is about 10,723 miles an hour. Now, I know that we got satellites up there and everything that are traveling at 17,000 miles an hour also. Well, I'd like to be a little astronaut up sometime. No, I don't want to leave the earth. You get me above 6 feet above the ground, I'm ready to get down. So I'm not going to jump on anything to go up that high. I've got a pilot's license, and I remember as I was flying, looking down off in the side of the thing, going, "Ooh, it's a long ways down." It's just my heart would just jump out of the chest. Just looking down, I know I'm flying. You know, this Cessna's going to get me home, I hope. You know, I don't even know how fast the sun is moving around the galaxy with all of us, but it's faster than the 10,723 miles per hour. It's faster. And it's moving all around this galaxy. That's moving all around. The whole heavens are moving faster than you and I can even comprehend. And Satan and the supreme president and the false prophet think they can do about Jesus. And Jesus is the light. Do you know how fast light moves? 186,000 miles per second, not per hour. Just to be. So here we are. Let's pick up and where we are. At this point, and this has taken time to do, okay? Let's pick up. We're fewer than 5 months from the end of the tribulation time. Let's pick up with what's going to happen. Seal 6. The Lord breaks seal 6. And the greatest terror known to man is about to hit the earth. You think the tribulation time was bad? Just wait. It is fixing to get worse. Satan, the supreme president, and the false prophet will instigate upon this breaking of the seal 6, the first step towards this time of terror. And what they do is Satan, the trumpet blows, and Satan will demand several things at this point in the story to take place. To allow the fulfillment of his demands, the Lord allows the trumpeter to trumpet the 6th trumpet. Here's the first demand. Satan will want the release of the 4 dreaded angels that are held in chains at the Euphrates River. They have been placed there in chains since the days of creation. Finally, it will be time for them to be released and proceed to kill 1/3 of humanity. Aren't you glad they're not released now? Our forefathers, including Abraham, Noah, and all them, are glad they were not released then either. They have been held there since the days of creation in Tartarus at the Euphrates River for the purpose of being let go at this point in the story to kill 1/3 of humanity. Second, in that trump, Satan demands and calls for an army of 200 million horse-like creatures to move west across the Euphrates to help in the killing of the 1/3 of humanity on its journey to join Satan in the battlefield that is north of Jerusalem. These creatures will be fierce, and they will not repent of their evil ways. The Lord will allow John to describe their appearance in great, vivid detail. I have scratched out a little, and that is my drawing of what John says they're going to look like. I had to scratch it myself so that I wasn't copying somebody else's, because I didn't own anybody else's, so I had to draw it for you myself. Now, how can this army of 200 million creatures cross the mighty Euphrates River? Just a question. How can 200 million cross the mighty Euphrates River? Before we answer that, we need to find out what happens, because we've got to get them loose, and we've got to be able to get them to cross the Euphrates River. So let's pick up. Bowls.